Kevin Hunter with Jody Summers here on Health Kindness. And if you're having trouble focusing and thinking and feel like you're behind or whatever, we're going to talk about nutrition for good mental health. This is actually a huge problem in this country. And when I mention mental health, I guess what I want to make sure that I'm not talking about is we're not talking about the situation where mental health is a product of going and seeing your therapist, or mental health is a product of getting on the right pharmaceutical drugs, behavioral modifying drugs. We're actually going to talk about mental health and how your life habits from your food and everything else are contributing to how stable you are mentally as a human being. So, Jody, you've got 5 major categories you want to make sure we cover on this. Let's start with gut health. Gut health and gut health.
Okay, we're done now. And actually, before I get started, I do want to say, you know, if you are watching this and you think, okay, I'm super depressed and I feel like injuring myself or somebody else, and, you know, she says that I need to go out in the sun. Okay, if that's the way you're feeling, call somebody. Like, this is more to support and to learn about how to have a healthy brain, and how, you know, all of those things. But I mean, this is not in place of, because I just don't want anybody to even think that, you know, some of these things are the root reasons, but they're not fixed overnight. So if you're having those things, get something to stop that gap and work on these things at the same time.
Bingo.
And the number one thing, the absolute number one thing without question, our mental health is directly, not indirectly, it is absolutely directly linked to our gut health. And the gut ranges from the mouth to the anus, so that whatever goes in the mouth and comes out the toilet, it's completely related to that. There is a long tube on it. We have what you're seeing on here is villi, and then the tiny little microvilli there at the top. And basically that is the lining of the small intestine. So food goes in the stomach, it's broken down, it goes into the small intestine where nutrients are absorbed. If that lining is damaged, you can let in all sorts of toxins that should not be in your bloodstream, and other places going to your brain. All of those things can really damage your brain function from a healthy standpoint. The second thing that the gut lining really does is, here we go, these lovely little happy bacteria. So there's different types of bacteria that live then in the large intestine. That's where the food goes next. And that is, in fact, 70 to 85% of our immune system cells are located in that larger intestine area, or directly right outside of it.
Wow.
And so when we have healthy gut bacteria, we have a healthy brain. These little things, they talk to our brain, or they don't talk, they communicate through our brain through what's called the vagal nerve. And we've actually done a show on the vagal nerve before. And that's what that vagal nerve is there for, to send messages to the brain. Well, if you're having bad messages sent, negative messages sent, damaged messages sent, that's how the brain's going to work. And so you want to make sure that the messages that are sent are healthy and strong. And so the leaky gut can come from, if we want to go back to the slide with that leaky gut, you can keep your gut lining complete with healthy foods, but things that can damage this gut lining and make little tiny microscopic holes and then cause inflammation are things such as antibiotics. And again, is there ever a time and place for antibiotics? Yes, they've saved people's lives, but then you fill it in with probiotics. So there's antibiotics. Glyphosate is a huge, probably the number one reason why we're seeing such decline in mental health, because glyphosate, which is in Roundup, it damages, it actually works as an antibiotic. It damages the gut lining. So we're dealing with food that is just completely filled with glyphosate and damaging our gut lining every bite that we take. NSAIDs, which are like, you know, pain reducers, and many pharmaceutical drugs actually damage this gut lining as well. In fact, just a study after I wrote this topic, I actually read a study, I think this was yesterday, about how PPI drugs, which is acid reducing drugs, can actually damage your mental health. And so that was just yesterday. So finally, some of the stuff is coming out. But to keep that healthy microbiome, those happy little bacteria, we need to feed them the right food, so fiber, prebiotics, probiotics. So this image right here of the cabbage and the garlic and the beans and the onions, those are all amazing for your gut bacteria. And they're prebiotics, which is the food for the healthy bacteria. And we get that also from soil. So working in the yard, playing outside, all of those things really add to that gut health, which then speaks to the brain.
So Jody, I have to mention, there's two things you talked about here with glyphosate, and then you had NSAIDs mentioned. I think not pharmaceutical drugs, but the anti-inflammatory, over-the-counter kind of drugs.
Yep.
Well, I just was, to familiarize myself with the conversation here on glyphosate, did just a quick search on it here prior to the show, and the first link that comes up is actually from Bayer, which we know makes both of these things. Bayer actually owns the product, glyphosate, and the title of the article is "A Vital Tool for Farmers." So yeah, you know, this is totally selling people on the idea that glyphosate has to be part of your farming project. And then, of course, you know, they sell the NSAIDs. So when you get a headache from all these bad stuff you got in your system, you could take their drugs too.
And
so,
I'm quite sure that Bayer is probably involved in some kind of pharmaceutical drug, not just over the counter as well. I don't know that for sure, but I would take a guess that they also have something you could get from your doctor.
Yes. I like the way you said that. Was there a little bit of sarcasm that I sensed there, Jody?
None.
Not at all. Okay, so have you covered all the foods that actually damage brain health?
The other ones that we're going to include, just because I can get so caught up on glyphosate, which is so important, but is hydrogenated oils. So hydrogenated oils are like oils in a bottle, canola, safflower, sunflower, anything in a plastic bottle, any deep fried foods that you're going to find at fast food restaurants or regular restaurants, chips, any of that stuff that has oil in it, or hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated oils, really damage the gut bacteria. Sugar substitutes would be another one I would add to this. I believe it's sucralose is the one that really messes with your healthy gut bacteria, in addition to antibiotics and things. So those are the things you want to stay away from, all the things we talked about, including non-organic food.
So when you're referring to sugar substitutes, just to be clear, you're referring to the chemical and or man-made substitutes to sugar, not because like on our table, we use sugar substitutes all the time, but the sugar substitutes are like grade B maple syrup. Or Steph might use like xylitol sometimes.
But that's not a substitute. That is a real food.
Yes,
I am
okay.
specifically talking about not something that comes maple syrup that comes from a tree, okay?
Right.
But something that comes from a bag that says tastes like sugar.
Yes, yes, there you go.
Like that.
All right. So foods that support healthy brain function.
Omega-3. So this is like the oils that you might find in a bottle. Anytime you see those just man-made bottles that says oil, just stay away from those. Like there's no benefit to the body by using those oils, and they're dirt cheap, and they're going to give you disease. So the kind of fats that you do want to use are omega-3s. So there's a balance. We need to have a balance of omega-3, omega-6, and omega-9s. They're all essential fatty acids. But eggs have healthy brain food. I mean, they are probably the #1 brain food. And I'm talking about just for the average everyday person. There are specific, like some of the MTC oils, and there's things out there for brain, oils for brain. Coconut oil is another one that's really good. But for your average everyday lifestyle, incorporate pasture-raised organic eggs. They're fabulous for brain health. If you're having some anxiety, depression, incorporate eggs into your diet every single day, sometimes twice a day. The bad thing is I've been studying some about prison food. I don't know what made me read about it. Now I'm kind of obsessed, but it is, I would love to do a show on it at some point. It is the saddest situation that I can eat. They eat just sugar and things that damage their brain health. Well, they're already in a compromised situation. And the one thing that they very rarely eat is real eggs. And I mean, they eat egg powder, which is a manufactured egg product, but it's not eggs. And I think that if we even came in and literally just changed the food that's supplied, that we would see a difference. And so if you can do it to just a big group of people, we know that we can incorporate eggs into our daily life. And there's so many ways that you can do that. So quality proteins, turkey, salmon is amazing for brain health.
I want to go, Jody, if I could interrupt you for just a second, I want to go back to something real quickly here, because so many people were advised by doctors, if they had a cholesterol issue, were advised by doctors to stop eating things like eggs. And then they create the double whammy of giving them a drug like a statin. So let's not give you the right food. So let's take away the eggs, and then let's create the double whammy with the statins. How big of a problem? I'm curious in terms of just the acceleration of the problem. How big of a issue is this that they not only take away the food, but then add this drug statins on top of it?
If you look at the actual side by side back, so the low fat diet started. The study that was manipulated was back in the 40s and 50s. Then they started with the low-fat diet in the 60s and the 70s. Then they added statin drugs in the 80s and the 90s. And if you follow when the low-fat diet was at its peak and they added statin drugs to that, that generation of people, which is just a little bit older than me, I'm 50, I just turned 55. So that 55 to 65-year-old range is that age when that first started. And that's the first group of people that have been on statin drugs for 20 years or whatever it is, eating the low-fat diet. Now, I'm going to ask you a question in kind of a sarcastic tone, and that is, do you see any brain issue with this group of people that is now epidemic, that went from absolute obscurity years ago, 30 years ago, to the 6th leading cause of death in this country called Alzheimer's? Alzheimer's is now the 6th leading cause of death in this country. There's something wrong with people's brains, and it is specifically become an epidemic since the low-fat diet was introduced, and then statin drugs was stacked on top of it. And if you search statin drugs and memory loss, not on Google, because they have completely taken over any kind of natural health. But if you search those things, you're going to find evidence after evidence after evidence that statin drugs damages our memory and our brain health. I'm sorry. Now I'll get off my soapbox.
No, but you hit the nail on the head. People who are asking questions very legitimately in this country. What do we do about things like gun violence and various things like this? You know what? We're talking about a very, very significant contributor to what those issues are. And yeah, if we don't face up to these kinds of problems, it's only going to get worse. So I don't want to go further down that goat trail, but
and food is just one piece. I am not saying if you give prisoners eggs, you're going to have. That is not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that it is a significant, but it is only one piece. But their diet and people who have mental health issues, diet is a significant piece of that puzzle.
Let's talk about movement and its contribution to mental health.
Again, movement stirs up hormones that are healthy. And oftentimes you'll see people, and unfortunately, and I don't suffer from depression or anxiety, but from my understanding, it is just this circle. So you get a little depressed, so therefore you stay in more. Well, if you stay in more, you're not getting outside to get the movement of the body and the vitamin D and the healthy fresh air. Therefore, if you're not getting that, you're a little bit more depressed the next day. If you're a little more depressed, you don't want to do stuff. And then it gets worse and worse, but it's this cycle and it's hard to get out of. And I don't personally understand it, but I have so many clients and it breaks my heart. And so what we try to do is literally take little tiny steps, even supplementing with vitamin D until we can get that raised. and trying to get them on a good sleep cycle, because that seems to be a problem as well. But getting outside, I have literally texted, I remember one client who was so severely depressed, and I literally texted her and I said, all I want you to do is go sit out on your porch. I don't want you to move, because she was in pain. Just sit in the sun. Just walk outside and sit in the sun. It was in the afternoon. And honestly, I don't know if she ever did that or didn't do it or whatever, but being outside is so important for our mental health. Movement, and movement outside. Now, movement inside is good too, but movement outside is really important. And that's because it provides sunshine, provides vitamin D. It provides serotonin, which is the feel-good hormone, which then produces melatonin to help you sleep. And that cycle then picks up and you feel better. I found it really interesting when I was doing research for this show about, I don't even know what I typed in, but something about sun and heat with men. And there's a new study that showed that if you raise your body temperature, you are less depressed. So through sauna, through hot yoga, through hot baths, through being outside, a higher body temperature has something to do with how you feel, which I thought was really interesting.
Well, this could be one of the connections, but as your body temperature increases, so does your circulation in your system too.
Again, I haven't read enough about it. I didn't even really read the whole study. I just read the conclusion. It's awful now I'm talking about it. But I would like to do some. I left it up on my computer at home to kind of research it a little more and what's the reason behind that. But again, being outside, getting movement, which raises your body temperature, like you said, circulation, all of those things, all those feel-good hormones. And then you're ready for sleep, which is our last topic here, and that is sleep is vital to literally, completely, absolutely vital to brain health. It probably should have been higher even than movement. And that is the reason, here's the reason. Our bodies are not, they're more active at night than they are during the day with cleaning. Our livers certainly are more active at night. And then our lymphatic system is cleaning stuff out, and it's like getting and detoxifying. Well, there's and it's going to slip my mind. It's called, I want to say, I can never say the word, but it's when our brain gets rid of the toxins, and it starts with a GLY something, and I can never say the word. I can picture it, but it's when our brain takes the trash out, and that's only when it's sleeping. And so you'll find that people who have brain issues will keep music on all night, or they'll go to sleep with the TV on and it's still light. That room needs to be quiet and dark. And I mean quiet, like no music, no background noise. I mean, a fan is probably fine because that's just a white noise, but nothing that stimulates the brain when it should be asleep. When it should be cleaning out. It should be, that's when it's doing its job to make you feel better. And after a good night's sleep, we all know how good we feel.
So I just want to conclude with this for our viewing audience. If you have a mental health issue, and Jody mentioned right away in the beginning that you should go out and seek professional help immediately, and then consider these things that we just talked about here for mental health. But I want to say this. You cannot out-therapy or out-drug a plan that causes poor gut health, that damages your brain from poor food, that doesn't support a healthy brain from the right kind of food. If you don't go out and get movement, you don't spend any time outdoors in the sunshine, and you aren't sleeping properly, you fail to do those 6 things well, and you cannot out-therapy and out-drug that bad plan with the rest of your life. So you are absolutely going to have to take care of yourself from all of these health aspects, or all the therapy in the world and all the drugs in the world are never going to prevent the problem that you've got. And, you know, interesting, Jody, I have visited with people who have been clinically determined to have a number of mental problems, and it could be PTSD and depression and anxiety and all these different things. You know, I was visiting with a young gal not long ago who having all of these various issues, and then so not only being clinically determined to have all these things, but in her head she was positive that these were all problems that she had to live with for the rest of her life. And I just made a couple of suggestions that I never suspected for a moment that she'd go and do it, because it's oftentimes these people that are in this situation, for whatever strange reason, seem to, I don't mean to say enjoy it, but it's like this lifestyle they've become familiar with, and they don't want to break a pattern. Right. So anyway,
I don't believe that they can. Yeah.
Yeah, and thought it would be like, why even try? Because this is what I'm cursed with for the rest of my life. And interestingly enough, she went out and did exactly what I proposed, and they were basic things, because I didn't know anything about what she might be eating for food and all these different things. So I just said, how late in the day do you eat? Whatever time. What time do you go to bed? This time. Okay, can you stop eating 4 hours before you go to sleep? I suppose, because I think it'll change how well you sleep, and I think it'll change your attitude for the next day. This depression, anxiety you're talking about, even feeling right now, might just go away. Give it a shot. And days later, she emails me back and says, 1, I've never had such a good night's sleep since then, and 2, I feel fabulous. And I'm sitting there going, oh, wow, and you could be eating the right food, and you could be getting out in the sun, and you could be getting exercise and all these other things to enhance how you feel. Jody, each of these moving parts, that if somebody is neglecting some or all of these, just even start doing one thing right, and it makes changes like overnight.
Well, and then you see people who do none of these things and yet go to the therapist and talk to the therapist and take drugs. Well, you could do that, and I've seen people do that for years and decades and not get any better. Like they're still struggling. Like, add in this stuff. Imagine what you feel like when you feel good, and if that therapy would be enhanced and you'd feel better, and you wouldn't have to pay continually, because now you're just you just don't need it as much. So I mean, it's certainly, there's no drawback to treating your body right.
I think in a little bit, the brain is this computer that runs the entire body, and I'm not either mocking or making fun of or putting down mental therapy in any way, shape, or form. But I think about this: if you are not taking care of the gut, if you're not eating the right kinds of foods, if you're not getting exercise, if you're not sleeping properly, doing all these sorts of things. And then on the flip side of all of that, what you are doing is introducing your body to all these drugs and everything else every single day to modify all this stuff. I think about a therapist, which they go in and have these conversations and kind of vent all of this stuff, and there's good that comes out of that, and then they get feedback from this therapist. But let's take a computer IT person and have them working on a computer. And we know the basic things that a computer needs to operate. But let's say they unplug this thing from the wall, they disconnect it from the internet, they do all these things that they know would be required to make this computer work properly, and then they sit there and talk to it for 2 or 3 hours and see if they can make the computer better. I'll tell you what, if the elements that make the computer work are not in place, no amount of talking will help it get better. I think that, this one of the things that's really missing in these mental therapy sessions that people are having is that where are the skills that these therapists have or these people have to help learn things like gut health and brain health through food and through sleep and through exercise? If they're neglecting those things, and if those aren't the takeaways they're coming away from that mental therapy, it is going to be nothing but a waste of time. You're talking to an unplugged computer, my friends. That's my 10 cents on it.
And I on that note, I agree with you. Because again, you need the foundations, and talking is fabulous, but if you're not sleeping and you're not getting rid of all of it, it's just all of it. It's all together. It's not one piece. There's many pieces that make us healthy.
All right, Kevin Hunter with Jody Summers here on Health Kindness. I hope you learned something about mental health, and if you're struggling with various issues, start employing these issues into your life every single day. You'll find that you'll feel better soon. Thanks everyone who joined us. Till next time, take care.